Have you ever wondered why you notice things other people seem completely blind to? Why a room feels different to you the moment you walk in, as if the atmosphere itself is whispering hidden truths no one else seems able or willing to acknowledge? This is where the burden begins. When your awareness sharpens and your perception expands, you stop moving through life on autopilot. You start seeing patterns, emotional, social, psychological, that others glide past as if they were invisible. And the strange part is that you are not trying to see more. It happens on its own, like an inner lens turning itself toward a deeper layer of reality. At first, this heightened perception feels like clarity, like finally understanding the unspoken rules shaping people's behavior. But soon you notice something else. The clearer your vision becomes, the harder it is to pretend you do not see what you see. The small hesitations people hide behind polite smiles, the subtle tension buried in their voices, the quiet contradictions in their actions, you catch every detail. And each pattern reveals another and another, until the world looks entirely different from the one everyone else seems to agree upon. The real shock comes when you try to ignore it. You tell yourself you are overthinking. You try to blend in, to go along with the surface-level conversations, to play the same social games everyone plays. But something inside you refuses to shrink again. Once the veil starts lifting, it does not settle back into place. You begin sensing intentions behind words, emotional currents beneath silence, and repetitive behaviors people don't even notice in themselves. And without meaning to, you start drifting away, not out of arrogance, but because the world you used to inhabit feels too small for the level of perception you now carry. This is where I want you to pause and reflect. Have you ever felt this silent separation? This pull toward a deeper clarity that others around you cannot perceive yet? If this resonates, share your experience in the comments. Understanding this content matters because it brings awareness to something most people never name. And while you're here, make sure to like the video and check if you're already subscribed, so you do not miss the rest of this journey as we continue expanding this perspective. As your consciousness expands, something subtle but undeniable begins to shift inside you. It is not a sudden explosion of enlightenment, nor a dramatic revelation. It is quieter than that, more like the gradual brightening of a room at sunrise. You start noticing connections that were always there, yet somehow hidden behind habit, distraction, and the reassuring repetition of daily life. Patterns in human behavior, emotional cycles, the unspoken logic behind people's choices, all of it becomes easier to see, almost effortless, as though your mind has upgraded itself to a higher layer of perception. What most people call intuition is, for you, becoming a refined psychological sensitivity. You observe the way a person hesitates before answering a question, the way their eyes shift when something touches a nerve, the way their energy collapses or expands depending on the truth they are hiding from themselves. And the remarkable part is that you're not analyzing these things. You're simply receiving them. It's as if your awareness has widened to include what others filter out to protect their own comfort. This shift creates a kind of internal rupture. You begin to understand why others seem content with explanations that feel incomplete to you. You see why people cling to the familiar narrative even when the evidence contradicts it. They are not lacking intelligence, they are protecting their sense of stability. But once your own perception expands, you no longer fit inside those stabilizing illusions. You can't unknow the emotional logic behind someone's anger, or the deeper insecurity hidden beneath their confidence. You see the motivations behind their words long before they articulate them. And with this expanded clarity comes a strange sense of responsibility, one you never asked for. You find yourself questioning whether you should say something, whether you should pretend you don't notice, whether you should shield others from the patterns your mind now sees automatically. This internal tension becomes the first sign that you are transitioning into a different kind of awareness, one that demands a new way of relating to people and to yourself. The more you observe, the more obvious it becomes that your perception is no longer aligned with the collective rhythm most people follow. There comes a moment in this expanding awareness when the shift becomes irreversible. It is not dramatic, not loud, not marked by some clear dividing line. Instead, it feels like a quiet click inside your mind, as if something subtle but essential finally locks into place. Suddenly, the version of yourself that once moved comfortably through ordinary life feels distant, almost unfamiliar. You realize you can no longer pretend that the surface of things is enough. Once you have seen the underlying structure of people's behaviors, the repeating emotional patterns, the way fear and desire shape so many decisions, you cannot return to the old way of interpreting the world. This rupture often feels like stepping out of a dream you didn't know you were dreaming. Conversations that once felt normal now feel scripted. Interactions that once entertained you now seem hollow or strangely predictable. You notice how often people speak without saying anything real, how frequently they defend beliefs they have never examined, how unconsciously they reenact the same emotional cycles year after year. And even if you try to re-enter that familiar rhythm, something inside you resists, as if your mind refuses to shrink back into the old frame. It is here that the sense of estrangement begins. You still care about people, but you no longer relate to them in the same way. The dramas that used to pull you in now appear as patterns playing themselves out. The opinions people cling to so fiercely seem less like truths and more like coping mechanisms. And when you see this, the emotional charge that once accompanied these situations simply fades. You find yourself observing rather than reacting, understanding rather than arguing, sensing rather than guessing. But this clarity does not bring comfort, not at first. Instead, it exposes how deeply disconnected you now feel from the collective mindset that once shaped your identity. You look back at your former self and realize how much of your behavior was driven by unconscious imitation, by social pressure, by the desire to belong. And this realization hits with surprising force. You cannot go back. The curtain has been pulled aside, and the machinery behind the performance is fully visible. The world has not changed, but the way you experience it has been altered permanently, leaving you on the threshold of a new internal reality. As you continue to notice patterns invisible to others, a subtle isolation begins to settle around you. It is not the loneliness of being alone in a physical sense, but the quiet distance between your awareness and the collective. Conversations that once felt effortless now carry an undercurrent of discomfort. People react to your insights, your intuition, and your observations in ways that feel unexpected, sometimes defensive, sometimes subtly resentful. They are not hostile because you are wrong, but because your clarity illuminates something they would rather ignore. You start realizing that most social interactions are built on an unspoken agreement to avoid the depth that you now cannot unsee. You see the hidden tensions, the inconsistencies in behavior, the unsaid emotions weaving through groups and individuals alike. Every encounter leaves you quietly weighing the balance between revealing the truth and preserving harmony. And more often than not, you find yourself stepping back, holding your perceptions in, letting the currents move without your intervention. Yet the tension of this restraint is palpable. It takes energy to maintain this awareness while remaining invisible. You begin noticing how some people unconsciously mirror your reactions, attempting to calibrate themselves to your heightened perception, while others recoil, subtly distancing themselves. This is when the emotional weight of perception becomes tangible. Your clarity is a double-edged gift. It allows insight, but it also erects invisible barriers between you and those who are not ready or willing to see. Over time, you learn that this isolation is not a flaw nor a punishment. It is a natural consequence of moving beyond collective illusions, a sign that your consciousness is navigating realms that most have yet to explore. The awareness that others may not comprehend or value what you see becomes a defining challenge, shaping how you relate, how you communicate, and how you protect your energy. And in this quiet, reflective space, you may wonder, how do others experience life without this awareness? How many connections are hidden, truths untold, patterns unnoticed, simply because their eyes have not been trained to observe what is beneath the surface? I want to hear from you. Have you ever felt this invisible isolation, this quiet disconnection from those around you? Share your experience in the comments below and let others know how it feels to perceive what most cannot. With isolation comes an internal tension that is difficult to describe to anyone who hasn't experienced it. The weight of seeing patterns that others ignore carries a subtle but persistent energy. You find yourself constantly evaluating situations, noticing cycles that repeat across relationships, workplaces, and social groups. It is not merely observation, it is a constant, unasked for insight into the structures that underlie human behavior. And the more you notice, the more aware you become of how much of life is performative, how often people act without realizing the patterns guiding their decisions. This awareness can feel like both a gift and a burden, because while it provides clarity, it also makes interactions more delicate. You realize the gap between perception and action. You can see what is happening, yet you cannot always influence it. The challenge is compounded by the fact that your mind is alert to subtle contradictions, the small dissonances in tone, gesture, and expression that reveal hidden motives or unspoken emotions. You cannot unsee these truths, and yet the world expects you to operate as if you do not. This duality creates a unique pressure, a mental friction that manifests as constant evaluation and quiet vigilance. Every casual comment, every friendly interaction carries layers of meaning that most people overlook, yet you absorb instinctively. Over time, this continuous scanning of reality can be exhausting. Your consciousness is engaged on levels that the majority do not occupy. You become acutely aware of the fragility of facades, the frequency of half-truths, and the patterns of avoidance and projection that dominate social dynamics. This heightened perception reshapes your priorities, your relationships, and your responses. You begin to recognize that not everyone is ready or capable of understanding what you see. You learn to navigate this tension, balancing the clarity of your awareness with the patience required to coexist in a world that often prefers the comfort of ignorance. It is here, in this delicate balance, that the burden of perception becomes both your challenge and your teacher, instructing you on how to exist fully aware without being consumed by what you observe. As you grow more accustomed to this heightened awareness, you begin to recognize the mechanisms behind your perception. It is not magic nor some extraordinary talent. It is a refined attunement to patterns and energies that always existed but were unnoticed by most. You sense the subtle interplay of intentions, emotions, and unspoken narratives shaping every interaction. Every conversation, every decision, every fleeting glance becomes a layer in a complex web of human behavior, revealing cycles and repetitions that dictate the flow of life in ways others rarely consider. You start understanding the underlying currents that motivate people's choices, the fears and desires that guide their actions, and the unconscious loops that perpetuate the same outcomes over and over. This insight extends beyond individuals. You notice how groups, organizations, and entire social systems repeat similar patterns across time and context, as if humanity itself is playing out a set of hidden scripts. The clarity can be overwhelming, especially when you realize how many are oblivious to these structures, moving through life as though blindfolded, repeating behaviors that sustain imbalance and misunderstanding. Your mind begins cataloging these patterns almost automatically, creating a framework for interpreting behaviors and anticipating outcomes. Yet this knowledge comes with responsibility, not the moral kind, but the awareness that you are a witness to dynamics that can deeply affect your emotional equilibrium. You become a silent observer of motives, conflicts, and unspoken truths, navigating the tension between seeing clearly and acting judiciously. And as this capacity strengthens, you learn to trust your perception while maintaining boundaries. You recognize that while you can discern the patterns, it is not always yours to intervene, not always necessary to correct or explain. The world continues in its rhythms, but your expanded consciousness allows you to move through it with discernment, choosing when to engage and when to simply observe. In this way, your heightened perception becomes a lens through which you understand the repetitive truths of human nature, allowing you to navigate life with awareness, insight, and a quiet acceptance of the patterns unfolding around you. As your awareness deepens, you begin to feel the subtle toll of perceiving what others cannot, It is a quiet fatigue that accumulates over time, the exhaustion of navigating emotional undercurrents, the weight of understanding patterns that remain invisible to those around you. You absorb tensions, unspoken conflicts, and the ripple effects of unseen dynamics, often without intending to. These energies settle into your consciousness, shaping your moods, your reactions, and sometimes even your sense of self. The more clearly you perceive, the more you must protect the boundaries of your mind and heart. Without conscious management, it is easy to lose the distinction between what belongs to you and what belongs to others. You might leave a gathering feeling drained, carrying residues of emotions that were never yours, and yet they affect your body, your focus, and your clarity. This sensitivity requires both awareness and discipline. You must cultivate practices that allow you to release the weight you carry, to restore equilibrium without denying the truths you perceive. Solitude, reflection, and mindful processing become essential tools helping you navigate the depth of perception without being consumed by it. It is a delicate balance between openness and preservation, between empathy and self-care. And this is where reflection becomes powerful. How do you integrate these insights into your life without becoming overwhelmed? How do you honor the depth of your perception while maintaining your energy and emotional stability? I invite you to share your own experiences in the comments below. How have you navigated the exhaustion that comes from seeing what others do not? Your reflections can guide others who feel this subtle burden, helping create a dialogue around the hidden challenges of heightened awareness and the ways we learn to carry our perceptions with wisdom and care. At a certain point, the clarity of perception begins to redefine your entire approach to relationships, decisions, and life paths. You notice how your interactions are no longer bound by routine expectations or conventional social scripts. The choices you make, the connections you foster, and even the spaces you occupy are influenced by a profound understanding of underlying patterns and dynamics. You start seeking environments and people that resonate with your level of awareness, while subtly detaching from those that thrive on superficiality, illusion, or unexamined repetition. This does not mean judgment or rejection. It is a natural alignment with what supports your expanded consciousness. Your values shift, often quietly, as you prioritize authenticity, integrity, and depth over familiarity or comfort. Decisions that once seemed easy may now require more discernment, because the consequences ripple not just through immediate circumstances, but through the intricate web of interdependent patterns you now perceive. Relationships evolve as well. Friendships and partnerships are no longer measured by shared surface-level interests or social convenience, but by the resonance of understanding, mutual awareness, and the capacity to engage with subtle realities that others may overlook. Even professional or creative paths are reshaped. You notice the structural patterns in industries, organizations, and projects, and your choices become increasingly informed by insight into these rhythms. As this internal recalibration occurs, you find yourself moving through life with a heightened intentionality. Every action, every conversation, and every commitment is filtered through a lens of awareness, allowing you to engage fully without being drawn into unnecessary distraction or reaction. This stage marks a transformation. In how you navigate the world, you operate not from habit, expectation, or external validation, but from a deep attunement to the patterns that govern behavior, energy, and outcomes. Your perception guides not only what you notice, but how you respond, shaping a life that is coherent with the depth and clarity you now inhabit, and laying the groundwork for the wisdom and discernment that will inform your next steps. At this stage, the paradox of heightened awareness becomes apparent. You see patterns and truths with clarity, yet the impulse to intervene diminishes. You understand that perception itself carries immense weight, and that attempting to correct, influence, or awaken others often produces friction rather than insight. The clarity you possess allows you to observe without attachment, to recognize cycles without becoming entangled, and to discern outcomes without forcing change. You realize that the world operates according to its own rhythms, and that each individual's growth unfolds in its own time. This recognition brings both relief and challenge, for it requires letting go of control while maintaining presence. You begin to master the art of holding space, acknowledging the truths you perceive without imposing them, seeing the dynamics of relationships without manipulating, and understanding motivations without judgment. It is a delicate balance, a form of conscious restraint that preserves your energy while honoring the reality around you. The liberation comes from knowing that intervention is not the same as responsibility. You are no longer compelled to correct errors, disclose hidden truths, or reconcile discrepancies. Instead, you carry your perception lightly, allowing awareness to inform choices that matter directly to you, while recognizing that the broader unfolding of consciousness belongs to others. In this space, you navigate human interactions with a rare equilibrium, deeply aware, yet non-intrusive, fully conscious, yet detached from the compulsion to change outcomes beyond your control. Your presence itself becomes a stabilizing force, a subtle reflection of clarity that encourages growth without coercion. By embodying this balance, you discover a profound freedom, the ability to witness, understand, and move with insight, without the constant weight of responsibility for others' perception or evolution. This is the nuanced mastery of consciousness, seeing deeply, acting wisely, and maintaining serenity within the intricate patterns of human behavior, all while recognizing that your clarity is a gift to yourself first, and a quiet influence to the world second. Finally, as you integrate this expanded perception into your life, you arrive at a place of subtle mastery. The awareness that once isolated you now becomes a foundation for clarity and presence. You navigate interactions with the understanding that everyone operates according to their own patterns, and that forcing insight or correction is both unnecessary and ineffective. Your relationships transform as you embody patience and discernment, allowing others to evolve at their own pace while remaining fully conscious yourself. Decisions are guided by insight rather than impulse, and actions are rooted in alignment with the deeper currents of reality you now perceive. This integration does not come with fanfare or dramatic shifts. It is a quiet, consistent embodiment of observation and restraint, the art of moving through life without being consumed by what you see. And in this space, the value of your consciousness becomes clear, not because you change the world by force, but because your presence alone offers a different frequency, a new possibility, a living example of clarity and equilibrium. If you've followed this journey and felt its resonance, take a moment to engage. Leave a comment below saying, "This message was for me," sharing how these ideas have touched your awareness. Make sure to like the video if it has helped illuminate these patterns, and check that you are subscribed so you can continue exploring this path with us. There is a next step waiting for you, another video that complements this one, offering further insight into the subtle patterns and awakenings that shape conscious living. Click and continue the journey, bringing these perspectives into your own life with awareness, intention, and the freedom to navigate the hidden currents around you.